What truth makes a groom leave on his own wedding night? Calm, silent, with only a clean file tree and a red-circled date? How far can a joke about replacing him stretch before it becomes a plan? And how does a lawful response cut through confetti, cameras, and family applause? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Anselm Rooke. I count things for a living, and I like when lines match. I work in hotel inventory, where numbers must agree with shelves. I thought marriage would be like that. Clear lists, shared keys, steady days. Livia, my wife, loves cameras and fast plans. She told friends that I take life too seriously. I told myself that patience is also love. On our wedding night, she turned a small joke into a stage. She said a bride can always replace what does not sparkle. People laughed because laughter is easy. I stood straight and let the sound pass. I do not fight crowds. I watch them. I noticed the way her phone stayed face down. I noticed new names in her messages, hidden as little pictures. I noticed how a best man became a prop with his arm in every frame. I placed these things in order the way I place boxes in a storeroom. I kept my voice even and my steps slow. I set a private reminder on my phone with a plain title. I kept a quiet folder on my laptop with short notes and times. I told no one. I planned to handle everything properly. I woke before the alarm and let the apartment stay quiet. The kitchen light drew a pale square across the table. I set 2 mugs on the counter with space between them, mine by the kettle, hers by the sink. I folded a dish towel the way I like, edges flat, corners neat. The clock over the stove tapped seconds in a calm way. I like clocks that do not argue. Livia moved in the bedroom like a fast song. Zippers, hangers, the soft thud of a shoe. I spread jam on toast and cut it in halves so the plate looked friendly. She rolled her suitcase into the hall and smiled at the mirror more than at me. She said the stylist needed her early and the bridal suite had a shot list. She said the morning would race, then smooth. I said breakfast was ready if she wanted it. She said content kept her light. She took a bite and left crumbs like confetti. I rinsed my mug and set it upside down. I placed her mug on the other side of the sink and left it empty. It told me what I needed to know. I opened my laptop for a moment. I kept a spreadsheet with only initials and dates, not titles, not forms. I typed a small line with the time she left the bedroom and the time the suitcase rolled. I minimized the screen when I heard steps. I am careful with screens. A CloudSync pop-up blinked and said, "File uploaded successfully," and then disappeared like a polite guest. I slid a blank page from the printer tray and put it under the keyboard. It was a spacer, nothing more, a mark in time that did not shout. She called from the doorway that Cass wanted a pre-ceremony bit near the elevator. She said the bit would make the feed love us. I said I would meet them at the hotel after my check at work. She said I should relax and laugh more. I heard the word relax land like a feather that hides a stone. I stayed steady because steady is what I can be. At the coat hooks, a new key sat on her ring. It had a small black cap and did not belong to our door. She turned the ring without noticing that I noticed. I did not build a story from one shine. I am not a fortune teller. I am a man who stacks small facts. I watched the way she kept her phone face down when she reached for lip balm. I watched the way a message preview flashed and then hid. The sender was not a name. It was a little picture. I kept my hands still and let my eyes do the counting. She said the venue wanted a loose timeline, not a schedule pinned to the minute. I said a loose line snaps when it bears weight. She said I sounded like a shelf label. I said labels help people find things. She laughed and called it cute. She kissed the air near my cheek and stepped into the hall. In the stairwell, her voice dropped to a low tone for someone who waited below. She said the mock swap would play better if the cameraman stood to the left of the aisle. She said the caption would be about upgrades and glow-ups. The words upgrades and glow-ups belong to a game I do not play. My hands found the rail. I counted to 6 in a slow breath and let it out. The stairwell door closed with a soft click that tasted like metal. Silence came back and sat down. I set a calendar reminder on my phone with a plain title that said Briar 6:40 a.m. It meant confirm your notes after you eat. The title meant nothing to anyone else. It did not say ceremony, vows, or replacement. I wrote a small sticky note and placed it by the key dish. It said, "Bring forms." It had no arrow. It had no exclamation mark. It asked for a posture, not a sprint. I opened the thin binder labeled Utilities. It had grown thicker than bills. I closed it without reading and put it beside Household and Bank. I tapped each spine with 2 fingers in a quiet row. My head felt cleaner after that. I went to the bedroom and smoothed the guest bed. The blanket had a shallow fold at the corner, the kind a quick hand makes when looking for something. The pillow had a small dent. It could mean nothing. I do not worship dents. I placed the sheet flat and made the room neutral again. I prefer rooms that do not tell stories when I am not ready to listen. On the way to work, I rode the early bus because early buses still belong to lists, not to crowds. I looked out at the hotel tower and then looked away. In the hotel back of house, I counted trays and carts and cases of glass. Numbers met shelves the way they should. The scanner beep kept my heart level. I wrote initials and dates again on a small pad for later entry. No names, no titles, just time. My phone buzzed once with a thread called Follow Up. The preview showed 3 dots and then went blank as the screen slept. I did not wake it. I do not let a tiny light drag me by the collar. I put the phone face down. I prefer faces I can see. On my break, I sent May a short line. I said I was good and the morning was fast. She said dignity is timing and quiet is not surrender. Theo wrote to ask if the best man had learned where his place is. I said I was at work and numbers were straight. He sent a flex emoji that tried to be a hug. I put the phone away and lifted a box because weight clears the head. By mid-morning, Cass tagged me in a story of shoes on carpet and called it pre-sparkle. I let the tag sit without answer. A staffer in linen asked me if I had seen the rehearsal bit about the aisle swap. He said it was funny if I liked modern humor. I said I liked sturdy chairs and clear exits. He laughed and said that was a mood. I went back to the scanner and let the beeps say what I could not. I set another reminder on my phone for later. It said Harbor 9:05 p.m. It meant check your entries after the reception when the noise is done. I set a small alarm titled Paper Drop. Alder 3:25 p.m. It meant organize what you know when the sun sits in the right window. The alarm did not tell me what to do next. It told me what not to forget. Before I left the apartment earlier, I had taped a small USB stick under the taxes folder inside the desk drawer. I had written today's date in thin letters on the label. The tape made a gentle pull when it held. That sound told my nerves that hands were still good for building. I came back home for my jacket and checked the wall planner. I circled a date with a light line. The circle did not shout. It only held. I locked the drawer. The lock clicked like a coin dropped in a jar. I breathed once and felt my chest square. I returned to the stairwell to head out. The air was still warm from her passage earlier. A neighbor's door opened and closed. A phone vibrated on the other side of a wall. My own phone lit with a preview I did not want, but could not stop. The little emoji contact again, just a wave, nothing else. The screen dimmed by itself, and the light became a black mirror. The hallway smelled like clean floor and metal. I went down the stairs one step at a time. A text preview from a contact saved as an emoji flashes and vanishes as the apartment door latch clicks softly behind me. The hotel inventory room is a square of calm. Racks hold what they should hold. Boxes label themselves under bright bulbs. A good back of house feels like a spine. I clocked in and let the scanner set my pace. I signed for crystal flutes and placed them by number, not by charm. A bellhop rolled by and said the rooftop would be a movie tonight. He said I should practice my smile. I said lists were my smile. He laughed and kept moving. I breathed in the cold air from the walk-in, then out. A line cook came through the service corridor holding a phone like a tray. He said a reel with the tag, Chuck's upgraded Groom, was starting to climb. He said the bride's sister had a gift for light. He asked if I could take a joke. I said jokes that need a witness often need a fence. He said that sounded deep. He went back to the lifts. I opened my laptop at the corner table by the mop sink and entered 2 times with initials only. I minimized the window when a shadow crossed the threshold. I have learned to let the screen go quiet before footsteps arrive. Ria, the venue manager, walked by with a clipboard and a look that weighed optics. She stopped and asked if I had a minute later, a simple, quick word, to align the timeline for card access. Her voice was neutral. Neutral helps. I said I would be at my station. She nodded once and moved on. A moment after she left, my phone buzzed a small vibration. The staff group chat had a clip labeled, "Replacing him on the wedding night," with laughing icons. It froze for 1 second on a frame where Dane stood too close in the bridal prep suite. Livia leaned into the light while Cass spoke to someone off-frame. The caption said, "Only content, not counseling." I saved the clip to a folder without naming it. I placed the phone face down again. I took the elevator to the mezzanine to deliver a fresh count of votives. The doors opened on the bridal suite corridor. The air held hairspray and cold fruit. Cass stood in the doorway filming while Livia posed with a garment bag. Dane adjusted a cuff and told someone that a mock swap at the aisle would go viral. Livia laughed and touched his sleeve with a casual hand. I watched from the service niche where vendors park extra racks. I did not speak because speaking would shape a scene for them. I only watched angles. Rhea stepped to the threshold and asked Livia for a word about timing and posts. Her tone stayed soft. Livia said the brand liked momentum. Dane said the crowd loved a harmless swap. Rhea said the night had guardrails. The word guardrails sat in the corridor like steel. Cass filmed the guardrails too, because a measured face is content in certain circles. I made a note of the time and looked at the framed emergency map on the wall. The red arrow to the stairwell always calms me. It says there is a way out that works. Back downstairs, the scanner beeped for a fresh sheet count. My hands moved in a clean loop. Fold, stack, count. When I finished the cart, I slid a blank page from the service printer and put it in my pocket. It was a timestamp with no words, a thin piece of now. I opened my laptop again and typed today's initials and 2 more times. A CloudSync pop said file uploaded successfully. I closed the lid before the screen could show more. In the staff cafeteria, I sat with my back to the wall. 2 attendants argued softly about whether a groom should laugh when a best man steals a mic. One said men who do not laugh are controlling. The other said men who do laugh are erased. I listened without joining. I drank water and watched the clock over the microwave because it runs 1 minute slow. I set my phone alarm for paper drop, Alder 3:25 p.m., and felt it settle in the list. Paper drop is not a command. It is a breath that points to a drawer. I carried the cart to the freight elevator and rode up. When the doors opened on the rooftop deck, the sun had shifted to a low angle. Staff tested fairy lights and polished railings. The city below looked like a box of mirrors. Cass walked the perimeter holding her phone high. Dane followed with a camera he had borrowed from a guest. Livia stood with her back to the view, scarf thrown over one shoulder like a flag. A circle formed and someone asked for a rehearsal cheer. The cheer came on command. I made myself the man with the extra glass racks moving through. I took my notes with my eyes. One of the DJs walked past and said a trend was running about starter husband and backup plan. He said the comments were mostly laughing. He said laughs rule. I said rules change when the lights turn off. He did not hear me because he did not need to. I set the racks in place and marked the positions with a small strip of tape on the floor where no one would see. Rhea caught my eye and tilted her head toward the service corridor. She asked if I could confirm the timing for removing 1 cart after speeches. Her words were about carts. Her eyes asked another thing. Did I see what she saw? I nodded once, not to join a side, but to confirm a fact. She thanked me in a voice that kept every letter. I respect people who keep their letters. The best man raised a practice toast and said the couple kept the backup plan close. People clapped because clapping solves awkward for 10 seconds. Livia let the line stand. She tossed her hair and turned her wrist so the camera could see a ring that was not the ring. Dane held the frame long enough to make a caption. I breathed in 4 counts and out 4 counts and found a corner where the wind could touch my face. The paper drop alarm hummed in my pocket, soft and on time. At that same second, a message landed from Rhea's account for vendors. A single line about a quick word before guests entered, to align carts and speeches so optics did not overwhelm comfort. The 2 pings overlapped in my palm and drew a small cross in my head. I looked down at the city and thought about shelves. Manager quick word lands on my phone at the exact second my paper drop. Alder 3:25 p.m. alarm hums under my thumb. The rooftop filled like a theater that had learned its lines. Strings of lights hummed, glasses lined the rail like small bells waiting for a hand. I walked the perimeter with an empty tray because empty things let me move without being asked to join. The band checked a chorus and found the crowd's breath. Cass angled her phone high for a slow pan. Dane stood in the bright path of the lens. Livia floated between them as if the night had a script. I kept my eyes on timing, not faces. Timing never lies to me. The first toast came from a cousin who liked noise. He said love needs upgrades. He said couples must keep options shiny. He called me the original model. He meant it to be charming. The crowd laughed because crowds like to be told how to feel. I did not drink. I did not correct anything. I watched the second hand on the rooftop clock and matched it to the song's tempo. I let the laughter pass through, the way wind passes through a fence and does not move the posts. Rhea stood near the DJ booth and marked the room. She carried a clipboard because writing makes order visible. She spoke softly to the tech and then to Cass. I could not hear the words, but I could see the cadence change. Cass nodded like a person who thinks nodding is the same as agreeing. She lifted the phone again and framed Livia with the skyline. Dane stepped into that frame without effort. His hand hovered in the air near Livia's back. He did not touch. He practiced touching. A guest introduced me to a circle as the groom with a funny tolerance. He said some men understand the bit. He said some men do not. He watched my face for a crack he could set a wedge in. I did not give him one. I turned a glass on the tray so its rim faced east. I said the view would carry the speeches. He laughed and said I had a way with deadpan. He walked off to chase a better story. The bandleader called for a special toast. Microphones multiply lies if the holder wants it. Dane took the mic and joked about keeping the backup plan close. He signaled to the crowd and asked for a mock swap at the aisle arch. People chanted for a swap like a chant makes a rule. Livia showed a sideways smile. She let the chant rise. She tipped her head to Dane to give him the light he needed. Cameras recorded a pose that said the night was harmless, the way a spark says the air is only air. I looked at the glass wind guard and saw our outlines. Her phone lay face down on a table with the screen waking every few seconds. A contact name showed as a single emoji. The preview flashed, then became a dark square. I have learned to trust the rhythm of light. If it comes like a heartbeat, it belongs to someone else's plan. I put that rhythm on my internal shelf. Rhea stepped toward Livia with the calm of a person who has seen many parties turn into reports. She asked for a word about safety near the rail and the line for speeches. Livia nodded, and then let a joke ripple over the nod. Dane said a creative night run would be better without heavy crowds. He meant a private session, he meant later. A cluster of guests heard it and smiled as if they had been invited to the inside. They had not. I stored the time against the playlist. The chorus had hit at 23 after. I wrote nothing down. My mind keeps numbers even when my hands carry trays. Cass shouted for the bouquet rehearsal. She said the spin must be dramatic. She said the caption would be about trading luck. Livia tossed the bouquet to the maid of honor, then made an oops face and spun back toward Dane, which let every phone catch the same joke from 2 angles. 2 angles make a lie look like a prank. People love pranks when they are not the subject. May watched from a quiet table near the door. She put 2 fingers on the rim of her water and found me with her eyes. Her expression said the same sentence she texted that morning. Timing is speech. I breathed in and out in 4 small steps and let my shoulders soften. A groomsman walked by and placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. He said I was a good sport. He said good sports keep nights smooth. I said smooth nights keep a city standing. He laughed at the shape of the line and drifted toward lights. Later, near sunset, the DJ cut the bass and let a slow track breathe. Dane pulled Livia toward the arch for night shots before night had arrived. He placed her hand on the rail. He leaned in as if to whisper a note about framing. Cameras lifted. I stepped back so I would not shadow the glass. In the reflection, I saw the phone on the table light again. I counted 3 beats between lights. I counted 2 more. I marked the pattern with the beat of the song. My brain does this when crowds grow hot. Counting keeps me human. A staffer from banquet service pushed a tray by my hip and whispered that the starter husband tag was trending. He said to take it as free publicity. He said all press helps. He made the word help work too hard. I let it pass. I set a rack on its mark and taped the edge of the tape down so feet would not catch it. A circle formed near the bar for a staged trade shot where the best man would swap places with the groom for 1 second. The idea was supposed to be a wink. The phones would fill the gap and call it bold. Livia glanced at me to see if I would stand in the circle and make it official as a joke. I looked at the city beyond her shoulder. I let the request move past me. She laughed into the space the way a performer laughs at a heckle she wanted. I walked to the elevator bank to update Rhea about the tray return. A pair of strangers followed and then stopped when I turned. Their faces broke into the grin people use when they pretend to be lost. I pressed the call button and looked at the numbers above the door. Numbers do not lie to please a crowd. The doors opened with a clean echo. I rode down to the lobby bar to deliver glasses, then back up to the roof. When the doors reopened, a sudden camera flash exploded from the arch. The crowd cheered like a cue. The flash bounced off the elevator's steel and lit my hands. The bell dinged again as another cab reached the floor. Footsteps paused behind me like someone wanted to start a scene in a narrow hall. The footsteps retreated when they found no spark. Camera flash erupts at the arch as the elevator bell dings. Footsteps pause behind me and then retreat. Morning after tasted like stale sugar and speeches. The family brunch ran along a long table that looked out on a side street. The window glass carried our faces like a quiet judge. Vera arrived first with a gift bag and a smile shaped like a press release. She told the host that modern couples bend and do not break. She sat near the center where eyes would land. Cass took the far corner to get the best angle for plates and stories. May chose the edge of the table, the place where quiet collects. I sat between May and an uncle with loud jokes. I poured water and kept my posture even. A toast arrived before menus. Vera praised courage to change. She said laughter heals more than rules. She looked at me while she said rules. I sipped water and let the sip finish. Cass played last night's reel with the mock swap rehearsal. The table laughed on cue. Theo muttered that a joke has teeth when it chews someone. He looked at me as if his jaw could do my work. I shook my head once. He closed his mouth. He knows my shake. Livia entered late, with light on her face. She kissed air near cheeks and set her phone face down beside her plate. The screen lit twice in a row and then stopped. She told the table that the night had been bold. She said the crowd wanted fun. She said, I take jokes too seriously. I said, breakfast is better hot. I served eggs to Eli's plate and moved Basil away because he does not like it. He smiled at the plate. Children pick the safe weather in rooms like this. Cass asked Eli if he liked the swap joke. Eli looked at me and then at his fork. He asked softly if swap means replace. He did not say replace like a weapon. He said it like a math word. I told him swap is a game people play with small things. I told him family is not a game. He nodded and cut his toast in lines. May breathed out in a way that said the answer held. Vera said the internet loved the bit. She said we should not fight the tide. Theo asked who brought the tide into the dining room. He asked if the tide pays rent. Vera said Theo should keep to weights and leave tone to adults. He smiled at his coffee. A cousin passed a phone down the table. A frame froze on Livia's face at the arch with Dane near enough to share breath. The caption used the word upgrade. Upgrades belong to machines. I am not a machine, but I know how parts fit. May asked Livia, gently, why truth needed a joke to stand up. Livia said content is currency. She said audiences understand performance. She said I should too. May said vows do not need captions. The table made that little sound a table makes when one sentence finds bone. Livia reached for her phone and flipped it, face down again. The screen glowed under her palm and went quiet. I did not argue. I am not a public arguer. I took a pen from my pocket and wrote a time on the paper napkin, nothing more. I folded the napkin and slid it under my plate. Eli asked if a husband can be an upgrade later if he learns new things. I told him husbands are not products. I told him he is not a customer. He smiled like the math problem found a shape he could keep. After we ate, I settled the tip and kept my receipt. Outside the restaurant, the winter sun tried to do more than it could. Theo asked if I needed him to talk to Dane. I said no. He said say the name once in front of witnesses and be done. I said I would handle things properly. He nodded and cracked his knuckles like a habit he hates. May touched my sleeve with 2 fingers, the same 2 as always. She said timing is a door. She said I would know when to knock. Back home, the apartment felt like a map I had kept folded. I opened it. I set 2 mugs on opposite counters. I washed both. I placed them back in their places. I went to the desk and unlocked the drawer. The key turned with the sound I needed. I lifted the taxes folder and taped a new USB stick under the shelf with today's date. The tape pulled softly. The sound steadied me. I slid a blank sheet into the printer and woke it. The printer spooled and produced a single blank page. I placed that page in the thin binder labeled Utilities as a marker in time. The binder sat thicker than bills beside household and bank. On the wall planner, I circled a date. The circle had been light before. I made it a little darker. Not heavy, just clear. I opened my phone and set a reminder with a plain title. Kite 1:15 p.m. It meant organized notes after lunch. I added another recurring line called Meeting. Personal, so the calendar would catch my eye even when the day ran fast. A CloudSync pop-up blinked on the laptop and said, File uploaded successfully. I closed the lid and let the room hold the quiet. Livia came to the doorway and said the brunch had been dramatic. She said my face invited pity. She said I should post a reel about being a good sport. I said nothing about posts. I said a house needs order. I said we have a child who hears words even when people whisper. She said I weaponize quiet. I said I use quiet to measure. She told me to stop measuring her life. I said I was measuring mine. Eli came in with his plant and asked if we could turn it a quarter turn so it would grow straight. I said yes and showed him how to face the leaves toward light in small steps. He asked if people grow straight if they turn slow too. I said people grow where they are watered. He nodded and set the pot down like a ceremony. The door buzzer sounded. A delivery wrong address. I signed because the courier wanted a name. Names keep paper honest. I placed the box by the door for pickup later. When I turned back, Livia had her phone in hand. A thread titled Follow-Up showed a preview and then went dark. She put the phone down face down and looked past me toward the balcony. She said I should try being modern. I said I am trying to be clear. I stepped to the balcony and watched the street for a minute. The city moved like it always does when families are busy pretending to agree. I breathed 4 counts in and out. I took my phone and typed a single sentence to Livia. I will handle this properly. The read receipt appeared and held. No reply arrived. I did not wait for one. Waiting for a specific sentence from a person who needs an audience is like waiting for the wind to hold a note. It cannot. I walked the apartment once more. Guest bed smooth, drawer locked, binders aligned, USB taped, calendar marked, alarm set, Archive A and Archive B in order on the desktop. I do not feel brave when I do these things. I feel ready. The house felt ready too. That night, when the lights were low, Eli asked from the doorway if replace means someone else in my chair. He asked with a steady voice, not a hurt one, which is worse. I told him chairs hold the person who sits with care. I told him his place was safe. He nodded. He went back to his room and pulled the blanket up to his chin the way he does when a day has too many colors. I stood by the printer. The smell of toner lifted and faded. The phone on the counter lit once with the word private and went dark. I turned off the kitchen light. The apartment narrowed to lines I could keep. I spoke one sentence into the room the way a person names a star to find it again. I will handle this properly. A child's question settles in the doorway as a muted private call lights and the printer spools a blank page. The door latch clicks once. I say, calm, that I will handle it properly. The community center gym smelled like floor wax and oranges. Folding tables lined one wall with gift wrap and scissors. A hand-painted banner said, "Thank you," in crooked letters. I signed the volunteer sheet, stacked paper plates, and kept my posture even. I do not like to be the story in a room. I like to be the person who makes the room work. Livia arrived late in a bright jacket meant for cameras. Cass walked in with her phone already raised. A knot of neighbors formed without asking permission. Someone said the wedding bit had been iconic. Someone said upgrades were just humor. Their eyes slid toward me like a lens that pretends to look past. I gave them the side of my face and counted chairs. Counting chairs is cleaner than counting takes. May stood near the sign and clipboard and ran a finger down the names like someone reading a poem. She lifted her gaze and gave me the small nod that means hold the line. Theo came from the gym door, still in a jacket with his logo. He asked if I needed him to say a sentence people would remember. I said I needed him to carry boxes and keep his voice for a day that is not today. He looked at the schedule taped to the wall and understood. He carried boxes. By the bake sale table, Livia laughed with two co-workers who had drifted in to help. One asked if the backup plan jokes would continue for the anniversary reel. Another asked if the best man could do a behind-the-scenes night shoot. Livia said content was currency. She said people give grace to a good edit. Those words had an engine I could hear. I let the engine pass. I set napkin stacks in rows of 25 and straightened the edges with my palm. Small square truths inside bigger noises helped me breathe. A neighbor with a loud scarf asked if we were trying trial co-living. The phrase sounded like a sale tag. I said we were raising our lives with care and schedule. She smiled and said that sounded like a memo. I said memos save time and stop problems from growing teeth. She laughed like she did not plan to write one. At the raffle table, a teenager tested the mic and the speakers cracked, then settled. The crack shot across the room like a warning that no one heard. Eli tugged my sleeve and asked if he could draw while people talked. I set him at the art table and watched him sketch a rectangle with circles under it. He said it was a bus that stops on time. He added a driver with a calm face and small hands on a big wheel. He said the driver knows every turn. I told him it looked true. He finished and tucked the paper in his backpack with careful folds that would not break the lines. He learns steadiness with his fingers. That steadiness moves through me like a clean wire. The raffle started. A man from our street won a basket of coffee beans. He held it high and said the night felt like a clean slate. Livia clapped and turned her body so the nearest phones could catch her profile. Cass filmed the applause like it had a message. I stood near the exit and felt the low rubber squeak of shoes from the basketball court next door. That sound grounds me. It says weight hitting a floor can still be a game. After cleanup, we walked home with the backpack and a leftover pie. In the kitchen, I set 2 mugs on opposite counters and washed both. I dried them with separate towels and put them back where they belonged. I opened the laptop and placed 2 folders side by side on the desktop, Archive A and Archive B. I dropped a short note file into Archive B with initials and times, rooftop toast, arch flash, brunch frame, neighbor phrasing, community hall comments. I added a single line for Eli's question at the doorway last night. I did not add feelings. I let the Cloud Sync pop-up float. File uploaded successfully. It slid away. I taped a dated USB stick under the taxes folder in the drawer. The tape made a soft pull that told my hand the job was complete. I slid the drawer shut until the latch clicked. The sound measured the distance between noise and structure. On the wall planner, I circled a date again, A little darker. Not heavy. Clear. I put a blank page into the printer tray and woke the machine. It spooled and produced a clean sheet. I slid the sheet into the thin binder labeled Utilities as a bookmark in time. The binder sat thicker than bills next to Household and Bank. I did not open it. I know what weight feels like by touch. I opened the browser and let 3 tabs sit without shouting. Storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me. I read nothing fully. I looked at shapes and addresses the way a person studies a map before a trip. My phone hummed with a calendar reminder titled Harbor 9:05 p.m. The title is for me alone. It means confirm your lines without changing your tone. I dismissed it and kept breathing at a steady 4-count pace. A hallway voice, low and tuned for secrecy, rose and fell. The faint beep of a recording app answered it from somewhere else in the apartment. I cannot fix other people's devices. I can set my own. I scrolled to a thread named Follow-Up and deleted a preview without opening the message. I set an alarm that read Paper Drop and turned the volume down to a hum that only I would feel. I placed my phone face down but not hidden. Hiding lives in the same family as parading. I like the middle path. It keeps a house standing. Livia stood in the doorway with a pose that wanted a witness. She said the world moves on jokes and brave edits. She said I looked old when I chose quiet over claps. I said I preferred clean lines to loud rooms. I said I would handle this properly. My tone was the tone I use when I tell front desk that a case count must match or an event breaks. The words were not a threat, they were a thermostat. She called me rigid. I said consistency is how bridges hold weight. She turned away and let her phone light her hand. I sent a final short sentence to her phone so the line would exist where lines outlast moods. I will handle this properly. The read receipt appeared. No reply came. The apartment sighed the way buildings do when night fits the walls. Eli came to the kitchen for water and asked if roots like quiet more than rain. I said roots like both, but they need quiet to hold the rain. He said he wanted to be a root. I said he already was. I stood by the sink and looked at the metal. It reflected me as a person who could be any man. That helps. I am not a special case. I am a person who chooses a door, not a window. I turned off the kitchen light and let the dark draw clean lines around familiar things. I repeated the sentence once to the room, not louder, only clearer. I will handle this properly. No, a hallway call in a low voice fades. The door latch settles. The printer spools a blank page. I repeat calmly, I will handle this properly. The office tower lobby keeps morning air colder than the street. Marble throws back faces without choosing sides. I arrived before the rush and stood by a pillar where the security camera sees a line without names. Gabe, the concierge, wrote something on his clipboard the way he writes for everyone. His pen does not judge. Elevators exhaled and sealed again in steady cycles. The lobby's sound is a language I trust. Wheels over stone, doors breathing, coffee lids clicking on. I watched the revolving doors because revolving doors teach you how patience works. People came in with tote bags and shoulders set for presentation. Rhea crossed from the internal elevators with vendor forms tucked under her arm. She glanced at me and then at the marble, not to share a side, but to mark that a person she knew was standing where records live. Vera entered with Cass. They moved like a press team that wanted light. Cass lifted her phone and then slowly lowered it, as if the lens had learned something about days that stand up by themselves. Livia stepped through the doors with 2 colleagues at her back. She wore the same bright jacket from the community hall. She looked up at the lobby clock as if a banner would drop. The colleagues peeled toward the coffee line, talking about decks and deliverables. The light through the glass made a clean square on the floor. The square did not belong to any person. It belonged to the hour. The server approached the square without rush, without show. The check was careful and ordinary. Identity was confirmed in a tone that did not harm the air. Gabe looked up and then back down because he has watched many dignities fold and unfold in this room. The printer at the concierge desk spooled a small receipt for someone else. The sound matched the beat of my chest for one measure and then let it go. The elevator bell chimed once. Bells only tell time. They do not vote. Livia's fingers met paper. Her hand tightened on the packet the way a hand tightens when a door finds the latch. The words on the cover belonged to daylight, not rumor. These were the first and only artifacts of this process in a public place. A divorce petition with temporary orders that make possession and money clear while the longer work begins. If custody had been our work, the schedule inside would have guarded mornings like a wall. If assets were the knot, the orders would hold what walls stand where they stand. In our case, the packet spoke about property and immediate boundaries. It spoke plainly. Paper speaks best when it is not asked to shout. Rhea paused 2 steps away, professional stillness in her face. Vera's smile slid and found no purchase. Cass's phone lowered to her thigh and stayed there. A colleague behind Livia said nothing, because sometimes silence saves a career. The lobby did not make a circle or a gasp. Lobbies do not do crowds. They do passages. The packet moved from one hand to the next, and the truth that had lived as a caption shrank into the size of paper that can be filed and carried and weighed. I did not walk closer. I did not make a speech for witnesses who had spent a week making documentation into theater. I stayed a measured distance from the square of light. I do not use victory to describe the correction of a public story. I use accurate. Accurate is the word that lets a child sleep and a house keep time. Accurate is the word that allows a person like me to keep working without breaking his own hands. Gabe made a note on his clipboard. The printer breathed again and fed out a routine strip that had nothing to do with us. The elevator bell sounded a second chime. A woman hurried past with a pastry bag and did not look up. Somewhere beyond the glass, a bus sighed at a curb, and the driver called numbers that only the waiting heard. Livia looked at the packet and then at her reflection in the marble wall. She turned her head toward Vera as if the expression could be edited in real time. Vera's hand lifted halfway and stopped. Cass fixed a strand of hair behind her ear because hands must do something when a room no longer gives them a role. Ria's eyes softened by 1 degree. She understands the difference between content and record. I turned to the revolving doors and stepped through. The glass curved around me and let me out into air that smelled like wet stone and coffee lids. The sidewalk held a steady line of people who had no part in our myth. I kept my phone in my pocket. I did not need a screen to translate what had already been said in paper. I breathed in 4 counts and out 4 counts. The counts found their places. The day did not ask me to carry more than I could carry. I walked along the planter that holds winter soil for spring plantings. I thought of Eli's bus with the calm driver and the even brakes. I thought of the way he turns his plant a quarter turn for even light. I thought of May's 2 fingers on my shoulder. Timing is speech. I had spoken without raising my voice. The sentence had traveled farther than any toast. It had landed where it needed to land. Behind me, the lobby returned to its normal language. Doors breathing, wheels over stone, a printer feeding a routine page, an elevator bell measuring a floor. The difference between rumor and record had closed. A public square had held a public correction in a tone that did not ask for applause. The packet existed. The daylight existed. My steps existed. I do not need anything else from a morning but the next line of a sidewalk and the ability to walk it. At the corner, the light stayed red long enough to make me stand still and feel my bones. A bus rolled by with an ad about trust on its side. I let it pass without making it carry meaning it could not carry. The crosswalk sign changed. I stepped forward into the ordinary, where a man can buy soil after work and teach a child how roots hold in any weather. Public service in the office tower lobby lands as the elevator bell chimes and the concierge printer spools. I step into daylight, cut to black.